Imagine, for a moment, that you are placed inside a completely empty, sterile room. There are no windows to gaze out of, no televisions to watch, and no digital devices to distract you. Your smartphone has been taken away, your pockets are entirely empty, and there is absolutely nothing to read. It is just you, a single empty chair, and the echoing silence of your own thoughts. You are informed by the researchers that you must remain in this quiet room for exactly 15 minutes. However, they give you one highly unusual alternative. Placed on a small table beside you is a scientific device with a single button. If you press it, you will receive a sharp, genuinely painful electric shock. You have already felt this shock before the experiment began, so you know exactly how deeply unpleasant and stinging it is. The choice presented to you is seemingly incredibly simple. You can sit completely alone with your thoughts in absolute silence, or you can push the button and voluntarily feel physical pain. What would you do? If you are like a shocking percentage of the human population, you would actually choose the physical pain. This is not merely a hypothetical philosophical scenario. It is a very real, very famous psychological study conducted by researchers at the University of Virginia. The researchers discovered that when people were placed in a room to simply be alone with their thoughts, many found the experience so agonizingly boring, aversive, and deeply uncomfortable that they chose to self-administer electric shocks just to escape the confines of their own minds. It begs a massive, deeply uncomfortable question. Why are we so utterly terrified of our own company? In today's modern, hyper-connected world, we spend an increasing amount of time physically alone, averaging over 7 hours a day by the time we reach age 70. Yet we drastically neglect our relationship with solitude. We treat the concept of being alone almost like a societal taboo subject. Much like a minor physical dysfunction, we aggressively try to ignore until it truly hurts. We fill every waking second of silence with podcasts, social media feeds, and background noise, desperately avoiding the quiet. However, making small, intentional adjustments to how we view our time alone can noticeably and dramatically improve our overall well-being. Welcome to the complicated, highly misunderstood, and beautifully paradoxical world of solitude. Chapter 2. The Hermit and the Stage, Part 1. To truly understand our complex relationship with our own company and why it evokes such strong reactions, we first need to define what solitude actually is, and just as importantly, what it absolutely is not. Think of the ancient, universally recognized imagery of the Hermit Tarot card. When this specific card is drawn in the upright position during a reading, it is entirely positive. It symbolizes spiritual enlightenment, deep self-reflection, and profound inner guidance. It represents the quiet wisdom that can only be cultivated when a person intentionally steps away from the chaotic noise of the crowd. But when that exact same card is drawn in the reversed position, its meaning violently and darkly shifts. It suddenly represents fearful withdrawal, deep paranoia, and aching loneliness. This single tarot card perfectly captures the profound dual nature of human isolation. The biggest mistake we make in modern society is that we mistakenly confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are profoundly different concepts that impact our brains in entirely different ways. As the historian David Vincent brilliantly noted, loneliness is essentially failed solitude. Loneliness creates a deeply painful wanting and a massive, unbridgeable discrepancy between your social needs, the human connection you desperately crave, and your actual social reality. Solitude, on the other hand, is the peaceful state of being alone completely by choice, without feeling that painful deficit. In fact, an extensive analysis of millions of social media posts revealed that while the word loneliness is overwhelmingly paired with negative words like sad and scared, the word solitude is frequently associated with incredibly positive concepts like peace, recharge, and bliss. Chapter 3. The Evolutionary Death Sentence. If stepping off stage is so remarkably freeing, and if solitude can be such a restorative experience for our exhausted minds, why does being alone have such a notoriously bad reputation in our society? Why did those study participants at the University of Virginia willingly choose an electric shock over a mere 15 minutes of quiet reflection? The answer is quite literally hardwired deeply into our human DNA. From a purely evolutionary perspective, human beings are highly social animals who evolved to survive together in close-knit communities. For our ancient ancestors roaming the wild, choosing to live alone was not a lifestyle preference. It was effectively a death sentence. Living in cooperative groups provided essential protection from massive, dangerous predators, enabled successful cooperative hunting to secure vital calories, and allowed for the necessary sharing of vital resources and shelter. This ancient, survival-based evolutionary drive continues to manifest powerfully today as an inborn need to belong. This powerful biological drive is precisely why modern psychological studies consistently show that making social connections, even initiating minor, seemingly insignificant small talk with total strangers on a morning commuter train, actually boosts our mood significantly more than sitting in silence, despite our persistent expectations to the contrary. We are biologically programmed from birth to believe that we are safer and happier together. However, to truly understand the joy of solitude, we must absolutely confront the very real, very dark side of enforced isolation. When solitude is not a choice, this biological drive turns isolation into a devastating punishment. Whether it is the heartbreaking tragedy of children raised in extreme, neglectful isolation in state-run Romanian orphanages suffering from severe, permanent cognitive deficits, or the everyday emotional sting of social ostracism in a school cafeteria or workplace, unwanted isolation actively damages the human brain. Psychologists have rigorously studied this profound social pain using a specialized virtual computer program called cyberball. When human participants are intentionally excluded from a simple virtual game of catch by computer-generated avatars, they report intense feelings of distress, drastically lowered self-esteem, and surprisingly, even genuine physical pain in their bodies. The modern, everyday equivalent of this deep, evolutionary pain is phubbing. Being overtly ignored by someone who is looking at their phone instead of you. Or cyber-ostracism. Like the gut-wrenching feeling of not getting any likes on a social media post that you were deeply proud of. The chronic loneliness resulting from this type of forced isolation is now widely recognized by health professionals as a severe global epidemic, carrying horrific physical health risks that are equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Our brains are literally telling our bodies that if we are excluded from the tribe, we are in mortal, life-threatening danger. Chapter 4. The Intrinsic Shift and the Reset Button. Because our brains are so intensely wired to fear isolation, we face a massive psychological dilemma. How exactly do we successfully transition from the crippling, physically damaging pain of loneliness to the deeply restorative joy of solitude? The entire secret to making this leap safely and effectively comes down to the underlying psychology of motivation. Think about the massive, fundamental difference between being forced to relentlessly practice piano scales by your strict parents versus sitting down at a keyboard to learn your absolute favorite song because you genuinely want to play it. The physical action is exactly the same, but the internal experience is entirely different. When we are forced into solitude by severe social anxiety, geographic isolation, or external social rejection, our motivation is entirely extrinsic. The isolation is happening to us against our will, and consequently, the experience naturally feels completely empty, unfulfilling, and painful. But when we choose our solitude intrinsically, when we actively seek it out for personal interest, deep personal meaning, or pure, unadulterated enjoyment, it magically transforms into a powerful pathway to fulfillment. This intrinsic, voluntary choice unlocks a brilliant psychological phenomenon known in scientific literature as the deactivation effect. Human emotions constantly fluctuate on a spectrum of arousal, and healthy solitude acts as a biological emotional reset button. When we step away from the crowd willingly, it actively takes the edge off high-arousal negative emotions like intense anger, crippling stress, and deep anxiety. In the quiet space of chosen solitude, those exhausting, high-energy emotional states are gently replaced with deeply restorative, low-arousal positive emotions like profound calmness, deep contentment, and lasting serenity. It allows our overstimulated nervous systems to finally stand down, much like allowing an overheated car engine to rest and cool off after a grueling, high-speed race. This conscious, intrinsic shift in motivation is what allows us to bypass our evolutionary fear of being alone and instead reap the immense psychological benefits of intentional quiet time. Chapter 5. The Gift of Soft Fascination. If you wish to absolutely maximize this powerful deactivation effect and truly master the art of enjoying your own company, one of the absolute most powerful ways to harness this phenomenon is by combining your intentional solitude with nature. To fully grasp why nature is so uniquely effective at healing our minds, we must look to how our environments tax our mental resources. Busy urban environments, crowded offices, and heavily trafficked city streets constantly bombard our senses with what environmental psychologists call hard fascination. Hard fascination consists of intrusive, demanding sights and sounds, like blaring car horns, flashing neon advertisements, and rushing, aggressive crowds that forcefully grab our attention and refuse to let go. We must actively work to process these aggressive stimuli or consciously try to ignore them, which rapidly and ruthlessly drains our cognitive batteries. Nature, on the other hand, offers us the supreme, restorative gift of soft fascination. The gentle, rhythmic rustle of green leaves in the wind, the slow, predictable sound of ocean waves crashing against a sandy shore, or the quiet bubbling of a forest. Brook softly nudges our attention rather than aggressively demanding it. These natural elements are just interesting enough to keep us grounded in the present moment, but they are gentle enough that they require zero stressful cognitive effort to process. This beautiful soft fascination leaves precious mental bandwidth wide open for our minds to wander freely, to deeply reflect on our complex lives, and to completely restore our shattered focus and memory. When we immerse ourselves in the quiet of nature, we are giving our brains the ultimate luxury of processing time. Ultimately, spending intentional, well-planned time entirely alone offers us the greatest freedom we can ever possess in this life. The absolute freedom from the heavy, suffocating pressures of modern society, and the profound freedom to rediscover exactly who we truly are when no one else is watching. By consciously cultivating an intrinsic, purposeful desire for our own company, we can effectively transform solitude from a deeply feared, ancient evolutionary punishment into a deeply rewarding, thoroughly beautiful, lifelong gift.